In this Marvel's Midnight Suns hero video, we're going to be taking a look at Nico, which is one of the 2 support characters you get at the beginning of the game. Kind of go through her cards and abilities and kind of explain how she plays in Midnight Suns. So the first thing you're going to notice when you start playing Nico is that she has a huge focus on randomized effects. Many of her cards like Blood Magic, Double Up, Swarm, Curse, etc. have random effects from a small pool, and you're not always sure which effect you're going to get because the randomized modifier is decided when you draw the card. So you know when it's in your hand what you're going to be able to play, but you don't know what it's going to be until it's in your hand, and then sometimes that may not be applicable to your situation. So she can be very, very difficult to play at the beginning of the game when you don't have your cards upgraded. There's less of a reason to play them if they're not exactly what you need and you haven't added additional modifiers to them yet. So for me, since I'm not a huge fan of RNG, my focus with her has been to try and remove the amount of RNG from her in order to get more consistent results and to make her performance a little bit more even so that you get something from her no matter what happens. So the first ability I want to take a look at is Blood Magic. This is an ability that applies 2 turns of either Blood Magic, Counter, Fast, or Strengthen. So Blood Magic is like life steal. That means the character's attack is going to steal life. Counter is obviously hitting back enemies after you take damage from them or are attacked by them. Fast reduces the heroism cost of the character's heroic abilities by 1, and Strengthened increases their damage by 50%. So of these, it depends on what character you're playing, but usually Strengthened and Fast are the best ones, unless it's a tank character, in which case Blood Magic and Counter can also be really good. But generally, you're looking for Fast or Strengthened when you're using this card. Additionally, when you upgrade this card, you also draw one of the cards of the character selected. So if you have someone in your group like Iron Man or Magic or Captain Marvel who use their own cards a lot, you can help get them a card that can help facilitate what they're trying to do. So it works really well when paired with those types of characters. It works well with any character, but even more so with them. You also gain heroism by playing this card, which is fantastic. And essentially what I've done with this card later on is I've basically made it so that when I redraw, I gain something. Either resist or heroism or block or something like that. Because a lot of times this card's just not going to be good for you in the circumstance. Like maybe you don't need counter because you need to take some enemy out, or maybe you don't need lifesteal because everyone's at full health. So by cycling it with a redraw and getting some effect, you're actually gaining some impact from this card even if you don't use it. And I feel like that's sort of hedging your bets with these cards, and that's why I pick something like that on Blood Magic, and I recommend doing that as well. Another example of an effect here is Give Block. That gives you even more reason to use it because the character is going to get a good amount of block by casting it on them. So maybe it's not the ideal effect, but giving them extra 166 block makes it more castable. And since you get to draw one of their cards, it makes it a more usable card. So the next card we're going to take a look at is Double Up. This is a card that gives you heroism, and it randomly picks between attack, skill, or heroic cards and makes a copy of that type of card for each one of those cards in your hand. So if it picks attack, every attack card is going to be copied. Not every card that deals damage, but every attack card specifically. If it picks heroic, it's going to make a copy of every heroic card. If it picks skill, it's going to make a copy of every skill card when played. So this is, again, another RNG-oriented card where maybe you have a lot of attack cards in your hand, but this is heroic or it's skill and you don't have a lot of those, in which case you're going to want to redraw this and get rid of it because it's not going to benefit you by playing it. So again, it makes a lot of sense on this card to have something that gives you something when you redraw, because probably, I don't know, a good 50% of the time, this card isn't going to benefit you. So gaining heroism, gaining block, gaining resist, something like this is really good because sometimes you're not going to be able to play this card and then you're getting some benefit from it still being in your deck. And one thing I want to mention too, the reason I suggest block and suggest resist or something like that that gives Nico protection is that her passive ability, and another one, gives her a 33% chance to draw a card when she plays one of her cards, but only if she's at full health. So getting block or getting resist, something like that, is going to prevent her from taking damage, keeping her at full health. You can even get health back when you draw in order to heal her up back to full health in case she's taking damage. But the idea here is you want to keep her at full health so that you gain cards when you play her cards. And that's why I picked something like resist or block when you're, cycling that card with redraw. Next up, we have Witchfire. This is an ability that damages a random enemy on the battlefield, and if it KOs them, then it recasts it one more time, and once you've upgraded it, it recasts up to 3 times. So effectively, what you want to do here is you want to have weak enemies on the battlefield or a lot of enemies that you know are below the amount of damage this card is going to deal when you cast it. So ideally, you get at least 2 KOs or 3 KOs, and hopefully even 4 KOs if you set it up right. But you don't want to use this card until you've upgraded it. It's just not worth using for one cast to kill maybe 2 enemies. It's not worth it in most cases. Upgrade it before you use it. Actually, you can just combine the 2 cards that you have into one, put it in your deck, and then when you get another one upgraded, that's great. But you definitely don't want to use it until you've upgraded it. And I highly recommend modifying this to deal as much damage as possible, because if you don't add the damage modifier to it to get more damage out of it, most of the time you'll deal just a little bit less damage than most of the enemies on the battlefield, and in that scenario it becomes much less useful. So in order to maximize this ability, you want to increase the damage with modifiers, make sure you have it upgraded with maximum casts, and make sure targets are softened up on the battlefield before you cast it. The next card I want to take a look at is Swarm. This is a heroic ability that deals a random amount of damage. It picks from 4 different damages when you draw it, and it's going to deal that amount of damage when you cast it. So sometimes it's going to draw on the low end, which sucks, and sometimes it's going to draw on the high end, which is fantastic, and you can do a lot of damage for 1 heroism. But again, it's random, so sometimes you're going to need to discard this card or redraw it in order to get something else that actually has damage, because maybe it draws on the low end. So having a modifier that gives you something when you redraw on this is good, or getting something that adds damage to it so it's more likely to be able to kill something in one cast, which is really what you're aiming to do, wipe out 1 enemy on the battlefield. Here I have a modifier for if at full health, give 41 damage, which, you know, is kind of a toss-up between that and some sort of, you know, get something on redraw, but ideally it would be one of those 2 things. And lastly, I have Blood for Blood here. This is a medium damage attack that generates 1 heroism that basically restores health to Nico or another hero on the battlefield randomly if she kills the target. And this is really, really good because a lot of times you don't want to take a turn to heal and then not do any damage. And this is a good way to deal damage and heal in one action. And even though it heals randomly, generally it's only 1 character that's taking damage in your group if you're playing right. So you can sort of isolate which character is getting hit with taunts and things like that, depending on which targets you pick. And also, if Nico has taken damage, this is a great way to heal her back up to full in order to get that passive benefit from and another one. So you can see how this all works together to effectively mitigate some of the RNG from her. You can either play the card really effectively because it rolled the right modifiers or rolled the right, you know, things that you need, or you basically redraw it and gain something for redrawing it. So either way, it's win-win for you. It makes her much more effective in my opinion. So talking a little bit about party composition here, Nico works really well in just about any group. She can deal a little bit of damage, she can do a little bit of healing, and she can buff teammates and facilitate a little bit of card draw of specific heroes with blood magic. So she's good again with heroes that need specific cards like Iron Man, Captain Marvel, Magic. Works really well in those scenarios. So that's a good party members to put her with. But she can do well with just about anyone, because if she can buff their damage with Strengthened, if that rolls, anyone's going to hit harder, like Blade, for instance. Or, you know, Blade might need some cards, works good with Blade. So she's basically good in any, you know, party composition, in my opinion. So if you have your damage dealer and you have a tank character, she's probably a good 3rd choice. It's either her or Doctor Strange early on. So you're going to choose one of those 2, and they both play a little bit differently. Personally, I think Nico is a little bit more fun to play than Doctor Strange, but Doctor Strange is probably a little bit more reliable in the things that he can do. So that wraps up our guide on Nico. I hope that answered some questions and kind of showed you how to play her a bit more effectively. She's tough to play early on in the game before your cards are upgraded, so consider, you know, working on other heroes until you can bring her along, until they're strong enough you can bring her along to get cards with her. But if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. If there's anything I didn't mention, make sure to post it to help other players out.